The fluorescent lights buzzed above the security desk, their cold hum cutting through the quiet tension of the morning rush. A line of shoppers waited to enter the grand opening of the renovated Westfield Plaza, its polished floors gleaming, banners proclaiming, "New management, new vision." At the front of the line stood Ava Johnson, calm, poised, her dark skin catching the artificial light like polished mahogany. She carried nothing but a tablet and a small leather clutch. Behind the security scanner, Officer Daniel Briggs lounged in his chair, one leg crossed over the other, smirking at the crowd. When Ava stepped forward, he didn't even look up at first. Then he did, and his grin sharpened. "VIP lines for real guests, sweetheart," he said, his voice cutting through the murmurs. "You'll want to try the regular line with the rest of them." The laughter from nearby echoed sharp and hollow. Ava froze for a second, then slid her ID across the table. Her hand didn't shake. Her voice didn't rise. "I think you'll want to check the name on that." Briggs snorted, not even glancing at it. "Lady, I don't need to." A voice crackled in his earpiece, urgent. "Briggs, stand by. Don't touch the guest in front of you." He blinked. "Look down. Read the name." Ava M. Johnson, owner, Westfield Holdings, his face drained of color. Around them, the laughter died into stunned silence. Ava held his gaze for one unbroken moment, her eyes steady and unreadable. Then she said softly, "You just made a very expensive mistake." The crowd stared as she walked past the frozen officer, her heels striking the polished floor like a countdown. The morning air carried the scent of new paint and freshly polished marble. A banner hung across the grand entrance. "Welcome to the new Westfield Plaza." Crowds pressed toward the cordoned lines, buzzing with excitement. Ava Johnson moved with the steady grace of someone accustomed to scrutiny. Tailored cream blazer, discreet diamond studs, posture straight as a ruler. She designed this very atrium herself, down to the Art Deco light fixtures catching sun from the skylight. But today she'd chosen to enter as a stranger, to see how her creation treated the people it claimed to welcome. Next, Officer Briggs sat slouched at the security checkpoint, chewing gum with an audible snap. His badge caught the light. His smirk didn't. Ava stepped forward, offering her tablet for scanning. "Good morning." He didn't return it. "VIP lines for store owners and management." "You lost?" Her expression didn't shift. "I'm exactly where I need to be." Briggs chuckled. "That right? Maybe try that line." He gestured lazily toward a longer queue, mostly working-class shoppers, many of them black or brown. Ava's pulse thudded once in her ears. Around her, a few bystanders shifted, sensing tension but saying nothing. She placed her ID on the counter. "Please check the credentials." He waved it off. "Lady, I know who belongs here." "You people always—" The speaker in his earpiece crackled. "Briggs, hold position. Don't proceed." He frowned, pressing a finger to his ear. "Copy that static." Then another voice, sharper. "Do not confront the woman in front of you." "Repeat, stand down." Confusion flickered across his face. He glanced at the ID, read the embossed letters. Ava M. Johnson, owner, Westfield Holdings. His throat clicked. "Ma'am." She met his gaze, voice quiet but edged with iron. "You already said what you meant." A camera phone clicked nearby. The crowd went still. Ava picked up her ID, slid it back into her clutch, and stepped through the gate. Her heels struck the marble in slow, deliberate rhythm. Briggs called after her, stammering something about misunderstanding. She didn't look back. Inside, sunlight poured through the atrium glass. For a moment, it felt too bright, sterile, revealing. A security guard murmured, "Should I?" Ava's assistant, already waiting, shook his head. No, she saw everything she needed. Ava kept walking. The echo of her own footsteps followed her up the escalator, into the polished heart of the mall she owned, where power wore a uniform and respect depended on color. Ava stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows of her office. The city skyline fractured across the glass like pieces of something half-remembered. From up here, the mall below looked immaculate. Every storefront gleaming, every customer moving in perfect lines. From up here, racism looked invisible, but the phone on her desk kept lighting up, shattering that illusion. Her assistant, Tariq, hovered near the doorway. "You've already got 3 voicemails from legal. And the PR team, they want your approval on a response." "It's, circulating," Ava turned. "The video?" He nodded, uncertain. "Someone uploaded it 30 minutes ago. It's spreading fast. Hundreds of comments. Some He hesitated. Aren't kind. Ava didn't need to ask. She'd lived the rhythm before. Outrage, mockery, justification, erasure. Every cycle the same. But this one carried a sharper sting. Because she had built the stage it happened on. She gestured toward her monitor. Play it, Tariq tapped his tablet. The screen came alive, the bright entrance, the line, her stillness, Briggs's smirk. His words replayed sharp and casual. You'll want to try the regular line with the rest of them. The laughter followed. The silence. The reveal. Ava watched herself walk away again. Slow, controlled, the image of composure. But she remembered the taste of it. The salt of humiliation she'd swallowed down. Tariq shifted awkwardly. You want me to call him? Who? Briggs. The officer. Security contractor says he's been bragging in the break room. Thinks it's funny. Ava's eyes hardened. He thinks a woman he humiliated owns nothing. He doesn't know who you are. He didn't care who I was. Silence thickened. Outside, workers replaced a sign over the entrance with new lettering. Polished chrome spelling Westfield Plaza. Her name wasn't anywhere on it. That was deliberate. She'd wanted anonymity, freedom to move unnoticed. Now that veil was gone. She closed her eyes briefly. No public statement yet. The board will panic, but I want their first words on record. Tariq frowned. That's a risk. They'll try to bury it. They already will. Her phone buzzed again, another message. She ignored it. Minutes later, the door clicked and Margaret Shaw, head of public relations, entered without knocking. Her smile was professional, her eyes tight. Ava, I came as soon as I saw it. This could spiral if we don't control the narrative. I've drafted something neutral. Unfortunate misunderstanding, both parties valued employees, diversity commitment. The usual tone. Ava's jaw flexed. We'll do nothing neutral. Margaret blinked. Excuse me? You heard me. Neutral is what they say when they mean guilty but untouchable. Margaret exhaled, lowering her voice. I understand your frustration, but we have shareholders to think about. Ava turned fully, eyes level. I am the largest shareholder. That ended the discussion. Tariq hid a faint smile. Margaret smoothed her jacket. Understood. Still, I'd advise restraint until the investigation concludes. Investigation? Ava repeated. Yes, security's internal division. They'll review the footage, issue a statement. Likely they'll say Officer Briggs acted within standard protocol. Ava's voice sharpened. Standard protocol includes public degradation? Margaret's tone softened, diplomatic. No one's excusing what he said, Ava. But if we escalate, it becomes political. Headlines will focus on you, your ownership, your race, your position. They'll spin it. I know. Ava's voice dropped. They always do. When Margaret left, Tariq broke the silence. You could post it yourself. Speak directly to people before they rewrite it. Ava's reflection stared back at her from the glass. Calm, deliberate, untouchable. She thought about it. How easy it would be to fight loud. But power like hers wasn't loud. It was calculated, cold, and seen only when too late. Not yet, she said. Let them write their versions first. Every lie makes the truth heavier when it lands. Tariq nodded, understanding the quiet strategy. Outside, the late sunlight painted the mall's glass roof in amber streaks. Ava pressed her palm against the window, feeling the faint warmth through the pane. Behind this glass, she murmured, they can't see what they break. Tariq didn't reply. He didn't have to. The line had already been drawn, not between her and Briggs, but between power and the people it pretended to serve. And somewhere downstairs, Officer Briggs was still laughing. The boardroom at Westfield Holdings was a study in polished denial. Mahogany table, spotless glass walls, portraits of founders whose smiles were carved from the same old power. Ava sat at the head, spine straight, fingers folded. Around her, 9 executives murmured in low, rehearsed tones. The air reeked of controlled panic and expensive cologne. At the far end, Harold Dunn, chief financial officer, cleared his throat. Let's begin. We're all aware of the situation. He avoided her eyes. The footage has reached over 1 million views. Public reaction is, well, divisive. Some support you. Others think it's overblown. Ava didn't blink. A uniformed officer mocked me in my own building. That's not divisive, Harold. That's documented. A few chuckles surfaced, nervous, thin. Ellen Pierce, head of legal, leaned forward, voice light but edged. We understand your feelings, Ava, but we have to view this from a corporate lens. You are the public face of this company. If this narrative becomes about racial politics, we risk alienating key investors. Ava's tone cut clean. If the narrative becomes about truth, we risk losing only those comfortable with lies. The room went still. From her left, Mark Jeffries, property director, tried to pivot. Look, no one's minimizing what happened. But the optics, well, some outlets are framing it as an overreaction. They're saying maybe the officer didn't know who you were, that it wasn't about race. Ava turned slowly, meeting his eyes. So ignorance excuses humiliation? Mark faltered. That's not what I meant. It's exactly what you meant, she said, voice low. You mean the insult only matters if I'm someone worth recognizing? No one answered. Tariq, seated quietly beside her, began taking notes, eyes down. He'd seen these rooms before where civility became armor and silence a weapon. Ellen tried again. Ava, we're asking you to consider a strategic path forward. A formal apology from the security firm, maybe sensitivity training. Ava cut her off. The firm is under contract with our property management, which means they represent us. Which means every insult he delivered under our name. Harold sighed, the sound of a man tired of ethics interrupting comfort. Let's not personalize this. We all face bias in some form. The issue is perception. Her eyes flicked to him. Perception is exactly what you're protecting. Mine threatens yours. The sentence landed like a blow. Margaret from PR, seated near the window, finally spoke. Ava, the board is unified in wanting resolution. We just need to decide. Are we responding emotionally or professionally? Ava smiled, small, cold. You think professionalism means silence? No one met her gaze. She rose from her chair, the scrape of metal against tile echoing in the sterile room. She paced once, slowly. The wall of windows behind her reflected the table. Rows of pale faces, one dark one. She studied their mirrored image. This company talks about diversity as if it were decor, she said. We fund scholarships, we host panels, we quote justice on our website. But when it lands in the lobby in a uniform laughing in public, suddenly we call it optics. Ellen's lips tightened. You're angry. Yes, Ava said simply. And if you're not, that's your privilege talking. Tariq's pen stilled. The silence grew unbearable. Finally, Harold spoke again, forced calm. We'll schedule a formal review of the security firm's conduct. Until then, I recommend discretion from all parties, meaning silence her. Ava looked around the table, every careful suit, every lowered eye, and realized none of them would risk their comfort for her truth. It wasn't shock. It was confirmation. Fine, she said at last. Run your review. File your statements. She turned toward the door. Just remember, I own the floor you're sitting on. She left before anyone could respond. In the elevator, the glass walls showed her reflection over the mall's interior, crowds moving below, unaware of the rot above them. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Ms. Johnson, this is Maya Brooks from the Chronicle. I have information about your officer. You'll want to see it. Ava stared at the screen, the name pulsing faintly. She knew of Brooks, a journalist notorious for taking down corporate cover-ups. Controversial, fearless, dangerous. She hesitated only a moment before replying, Tomorrow. The elevator doors slid open onto the private level. The hum of the building followed her out, soft and relentless. Behind her, glass reflected her figure in infinite copies, each one standing a little straighter than the last. By dawn, Ava's name wasn't hers anymore. It belonged to headlines. Mall racism, Air Officer Briggs and Ava Johnson trended across platforms before she'd even finished her first coffee. The viral clip 41 Seconds of Humiliation had become public property. Cut, captioned, remixed, weaponized. She sat at her kitchen counter, phone face down, laptop open. Tariq's messages piled up, PR's panicking. He's on TV. Ava, you should see this. She clicked. A news segment filled the screen. Split frame, her photo on one side, Officer Daniel Briggs on the other. He wore his uniform, posture stiff, expression sanctimonious. I was just doing my job, he said. Security protocols exist for a reason. I had no idea who she was. People are overreacting. The host nodded politely. So you deny any racial bias? Briggs leaned forward. Absolutely. This is reverse discrimination. I'm being vilified for enforcing rules. Ava shut the laptop. The words had the oily tone of someone rehearsed in victimhood. Moments later, her phone buzzed again, this time with a video notification. The clip had been re-uploaded by an influencer with 2 million followers. Title: Was this racism or a misunderstanding? She didn't need to watch. She already knew the structure. Slow replay, split opinions, ad revenue from outrage. When Tariq arrived, she hadn't moved. "You've been quiet," he said cautiously. "Noise doesn't need my contribution." He hesitated. "You're trending at #1. She finally looked up. "And Briggs?" "His department's standing by him." They issued a statement. "Commendable record, exemplary service. They're framing you as an overreaching executive trying to ruin a working man's career." Ava exhaled through her nose, steady and slow. Classic playbook. What now? She tapped her tablet, pulling up the security logs from the day of the incident. "Now we look for patterns. He's done this before, I can feel it," Tariq frowned. "Even if he has, they'll cover it up. You know how these contracts work." "The union, then we don't go through them," she said. "We go through her." "Maya Brooks?" Ava nodded. "Tomorrow's meeting stays on schedule. I'll give her what she needs." Tariq hesitated. "You're sure about that? Once she prints your name, there's no turning back." Ava's gaze hardened. "They already took my anonymity. I'll decide what they take next." He didn't argue. Outside the kitchen window, the city stretched toward a pale horizon. News vans were already stationed near the mall. Antennae raised, reporters rehearsing lines. The same place she'd built to be inclusive had become a symbol of exclusion. Her phone buzzed again. "Private number." Against instinct, she answered. "Ms. Johnson?" A low male voice said, calm but mocking. "You don't know who you're playing with." She froze. "Who is this?" "Someone who thinks you should remember your place. We're done being made villains." The line clicked dead. Ava stared at the screen until it dimmed. Then she turned to Tariq. "They're afraid," he swallowed. "That sounded like a threat." "That was a threat," she corrected, standing. "Which means we're closer than they think." She walked to the window, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the gathering press. Below, the mall doors glinted in the early light. The same glass that had once reflected her pride now showed the shape of a war she hadn't chosen, but couldn't ignore. In the reflection, her face looked older, sharper. But the line of her jaw held steady. Let them talk. Let them twist it. Every word they spread built her case, each denial, each insult, each shaky defense. By nightfall, the internet would forget the laughter. But she wouldn't. Not this time. The police headquarters smelled of disinfectant and coffee gone cold. Ava sat across from Captain Ray Norris, head of internal affairs, his posture an advertisement for indifference. A thin folder lay unopened on the desk between them, her name stamped across the top. He didn't look up as he spoke. "We appreciate your cooperation, Ms. Johnson. This inquiry is just a formality." Ava's voice was steady. "Formality usually means nothing will happen." Norris smiled faintly. "You misunderstand. We take allegations seriously. But Officer Briggs has an exemplary record. No prior complaints, no use of force incidents. You know how online outrage works, things get exaggerated." Ava leaned forward. "You've watched the footage?" "I have." "Then you saw what he said." "I saw a misunderstanding." "Heated, yes, but," she cut him off. "He humiliated me because of what I look like." The smile vanished. "Ms. Johnson, I understand how you felt," she snapped. "You understand nothing," the words echoed. Norris blinked, recalibrating. Ava exhaled, regaining composure. "You've built a system that protects your own. I'm not naive enough to expect accountability here. I just wanted to see the face of the wall." For a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Annoyance, maybe respect. "We'll review all materials," he said stiffly, closing the file. "You'll be notified." She stood. "No, you won't. You'll be notified when this goes public." And she walked out. Outside, sunlight hit her like a challenge. Reporters swarmed the steps. Microphones extended like weapons. "Ms. Johnson, do you believe the officer's actions were racially motivated? Are you planning a lawsuit? Do you feel targeted because of your success?" She ignored them, pushing through the noise. But somewhere in the chaos, a single voice rose above the rest. Clear, female, deliberate. "Ava Johnson? Maya Brooks." Chronicle News, Ava stopped. The woman approaching was sharp-eyed, brown-skinned, carrying a leather satchel and a half-dead phone. She looked like someone who'd burned bridges and never looked back. "You're early," Ava said. Maya shrugged. "You made headlines faster than I planned. Figured I'd catch the storm at its center." Ava gestured toward the parked car. "Let's talk somewhere quieter." They sat in a downtown cafe, one of those modern ones with reclaimed wood and overpriced espresso. Maya pulled out a recorder. "Off the record first, if you want." Ava nodded. Maya leaned in. "You're not my first case like this. Officer Briggs has a history. 3 prior complaints from mall employees. All dropped. 2 involved racial profiling. But here's the twist. The security firm's internal reviews were handled by police liaisons, his friends. Every one of them signed off insufficient evidence." Ava's expression didn't change, but her hands clenched in her lap. "You have proof?" "I have documents, emails, memos. Someone inside leaked them." "Why?" "Because the rot's too big to hide now." Ava studied her. "And what do you want from me?" "Your cooperation. I can't print this without corroboration. You're the highest profile victim he's ever targeted." "Victim?" Ava repeated, tasting the word. Maya's gaze didn't flinch. "You want another term?" "No," Ava said softly. "Victim will do for now." Maya switched the recorder on. "Then let's start from the beginning. Tell me everything." By the time they left, the sun had dropped behind the skyline. Ava felt hollow but sharpened. For years she'd built systems, not stories, controlled outcomes, not emotions. Now she was giving shape to both. In the car, Tariq texted her, "You okay?" She typed back, "Better than before." Then another message arrived, anonymous again. "Stop digging or the next video won't be so flattering." Her chest tightened. She stared at the words, then forwarded them to Maya without comment. The journalist replied seconds later, "Threats mean we're getting close." Ava almost smiled. Later that night, she stood alone in her office, city lights reflected in the glass. On the TV behind her, the news replayed the clip again, looping it like ritual humiliation. She muted the sound. Tariq entered quietly. "They're saying the department won't press charges. Not enough evidence?" "Expected," she said. He hesitated. "So what's next?" She turned toward him, voice calm, almost serene. "Next, we give them evidence they can't bury." "How?" She looked at the muted screen. Briggs's face frozen mid-laugh. "We let the truth speak in public. Not in their reports, not in their rooms." Tariq frowned. "You mean Maya's article?" "Yes, but not just that, everything." He stepped closer. "You're risking your reputation, your company." Ava faced him fully. "They already risked my humanity. Seems like a fair trade." He nodded slowly, understanding. She turned back to the window. Down below, the plaza lights glowed like embers under glass. She imagined the next morning. Front pages, statements, backlash. It didn't scare her anymore. For the first time in years, she wasn't managing perception. She was forcing it to look back. The article dropped at 6:47 a.m. The Westfield Incident, Racism Behind the Badge, by Maya Brooks. Chronicle Investigations. Ava read it standing by the window of her penthouse, dawn cutting gold lines across the floor. Every word burned. Every sentence pulled open the machinery behind her humiliation. The exposé named the security firm, traced financial ties between the police union and Westfield's contractors, exposed a chain of internal cover-ups all backed by scanned documents, quotes, emails. Halfway down the page, a subheading appeared. When power smiles, the silence of the modern bystander. Below it, her photo, frozen mid-step from that viral clip. The image of Grace mistaken for submission. Her phone exploded. Messages, calls, alerts. Tariq's name flashed first. "You've seen it?" "I'm reading." "It's everywhere." The networks followed within hours. Morning anchors dissected the story like a wound, their tones rehearsed, concerned, performative. The mall's PR team scrambled, issuing sterile denials. Corporate allies vanished from her inbox. Board members scheduled urgent reviews without her. But the public, this time, didn't look away. At police headquarters, Officer Daniel Briggs sat in a conference room, eyes glued to the television. His hands twitched as Maya's voiceover played from a clip of her report. Multiple complaints show a pattern of racial profiling ignored by internal review. Officer Briggs's behavior at Westfield Plaza wasn't an isolated lapse. It was standard procedure disguised as security. His superior, Captain Norris, stood by the door, jaw tight. "You told me there were no complaints. They were dismissed," Briggs barked. "Not my fault she turned this into a circus." Norris's gaze hardened. "It's not a circus anymore. It's a scandal. The mayor's office wants distance. You're suspended pending investigation." "What?" "You heard me." Briggs slammed his fist against the table. "I'm being thrown under the bus." "Maybe," Norris said flatly, "but you drove it." By afternoon, the mall swelled with reporters. Cameras angled toward the glass facade where a banner of Westfield's motto hung, "Where everyone belongs." Ava arrived through a back entrance. She wasn't smiling. She didn't speak. She simply walked the floors she owned, past stores and escalators, past the site of her public humiliation. Now the space hummed with uneasy awareness. Employees whispered, glancing at her as if seeing the building itself change shape. Tariq joined her near the atrium. "They're calling for your comment." "I already gave it," she said. "You mean the article?" "I mean the truth," he hesitated. "There's talk online. Boycotts, protests, investors pulling out. It's chaos." "Good," Ava said. "Chaos shakes the rot loose." She stopped near the fountain, the spot where she'd stood that morning weeks ago. The marble still gleamed, but it felt different now, heavier, as if aware of what had happened there. Maya arrived moments later, phone in hand. "They're eating it alive," she said. "Half the city wants Briggs fired, the other half screaming about cancel culture. But the evidence stuck. They can't ignore this one." Ava's expression didn't change. "They'll try. They will," Maya admitted. "But this time the story's too big for containment." "You did that?" "No," Ava said quietly. "He did that. I just stopped pretending it was isolated." Maya studied her for a beat. "You know they'll come for you next. Character smears, old contracts, personal attacks. They always turn it back on the woman who speaks." Ava's tone was even. "They can try. My record's clean." "That's not what they'll attack." Ava understood. "They'll go after the idea of me." "Exactly." For a moment the two women stood in silence, one who exposed systems, one who lived inside them. Different weapons, same war. Then Ava said, "Let them. If the truth only works when it's safe, it isn't truth." By nightfall the city was lit with it. Screens flashing her name, Briggs's face, the mall's logo. Hashtags turned into headlines. Headlines into arguments, arguments into protests. Tariq watched from the office balcony. "You've started something bigger than you can control." Ava joined him, gaze steady. "I didn't start it. I just stopped ending it." He turned to her. "You think justice will come of this?" She didn't answer immediately. Her eyes stayed fixed on the plaza below, crowds gathering, signs raised, chants echoing through the atrium. Finally, she said, "Justice doesn't come. You have to drag it out into the light." Down in the street, someone shouted her name. Cameras flashed. Ava didn't wave, didn't smile. She simply stood there. Woman, owner, witness, watching the machine she'd built crack open under the weight of the truth she refused to bury. The hearing room smelled like cold coffee and tension. Rows of seats faced a long table lined with microphones, each nameplate gleaming under white fluorescent light. Briggs, Daniel, suspension review. Cameras waited like predators. Reporters whispered, pens tapping. Ava sat near the back, expression unreadable. She wasn't there for vengeance. She was there to watch the system look itself in the mirror. Briggs entered flanked by two union reps, his uniform crisp but his eyes restless. He scanned the room, spotted Ava, froze. For a moment, the smirk that once came so easily didn't come at all. Chairwoman Ellis adjusted her glasses. "Officer Briggs, these proceedings concern multiple allegations of racial misconduct, falsification of incident reports, and abuse of authority. Do you understand the charges?" Briggs leaned into the microphone. "Yes, ma'am. But I'll say it again, I did my job by the book. What happened at the mall was blown out of proportion by a viral video and biased media." Ellis didn't blink. "We'll determine that." A hush settled as the first clip played on the screen, the original video. The sound echoed through the chamber, Briggs's laugh sharp and dismissive. His voice, "Some people just don't belong in this line." The audience stirred. Someone gasped. Briggs's lawyer interjected, "Context matters." "The clip was edited." Ellis raised a hand. "We've reviewed the unedited footage." Ava felt her pulse in her throat. Watching it again, she realized how much her silence had spoken for her that day. Her stillness wasn't submission. It was a refusal to let him dictate her dignity. Next came Maya Brooks, sworn in as a witness. "Ms. Brooks," Ellis began, "you authored the Chronicle article that exposed internal misconduct. Can you confirm your sources?" "I can," Maya said. The evidence was obtained through whistleblower testimony and verified documents. Officer Briggs's behavior wasn't an anomaly. It was protected by procedure. Briggs's lawyer objected. "Speculation." "Documentation," Maya corrected. "And pattern recognition," the crowd murmured. Ellis leaned forward. "Officer Briggs, is there any reason these records list your name on 6 prior complaints for racial bias, all dismissed within 48 hours? Briggs stiffened. "False claims. People play the race card when they don't get their way." A murmur rippled through the gallery, disbelief, disgust. Ellis's voice dropped. "Then explain this internal email signed by you stating, 'We can't keep letting them pull that stunt at upscale stores.'" Briggs went pale. The silence that followed felt heavy enough to break the ceiling. His lawyer whispered furiously. But Briggs snapped the folder shut. "Fine," he spat. "You want honesty? People like her," he jerked a thumb toward Ava, "think money changes what they are. I was keeping order. That's what the job is." The room erupted. Reporters scribbled, cameras flashed. Ellis's gavel hit the desk, echoing like a gunshot. "Enough." Outside the chamber, storm clouds gathered. The press swarmed, microphones like bayonets. "Ava, do you feel vindicated? Will you press charges?" She walked straight through them, no comment, face calm but tight. Inside her, the words Briggs had just said replayed over and over. What they are. Tariq caught up outside. "They're going to fire him." "You did it." She stopped at the courthouse steps. "No, the system did what it does best. It sacrificed one man to protect itself." He frowned. "You don't think this is change?" "Change isn't firing the symptom," she said. "It's dismantling what made him feel untouchable." She looked up at the sky. The air felt heavy, electric. But maybe this crack's enough to start the flood. Later that night, the verdict was broadcast live. Officer Daniel Briggs found guilty of misconduct and terminated from service, pending further investigation by the state attorney's office. The anchor's tone was neutral, almost bored, like the weight of it didn't reach through the screen. Ava sat alone. The city skyline reflected in her window. She didn't cheer, didn't smile. Justice, when it came, never felt clean. It came covered in ash and exhaustion. She picked up her phone, opened her inbox, hundreds of messages. Support, threats, apologies. One subject line caught her eye, from Briggs. Subject, "You won." She opened it. "You think this changes anything? They'll still look at you and see what I saw." Just quieter. Her finger hovered over delete, then she hit save. Not out of fear, but because truth, even poisoned, needed to be remembered. Morning brought protests and applause. A mural appeared overnight on the wall opposite the mall's main gate. A painted figure of a black woman standing tall, while a uniformed man's shadow cracked beneath her feet. Beneath it, in bold white paint, "Dignity is not granted. It's reclaimed." Ava stood before it, wind tugging her coat. For the first time in weeks, she let herself breathe fully. The system had bent, not broken. But it had moved, and sometimes, that was how revolutions began. Quietly, under flickering streetlights, painted in colors the powerful could never erase. The air inside Westfield Mall felt wrong that morning. Too quiet. Too sterile, like the silence after a funeral. Overnight, the mall's corporate office had resigned en masse. News trucks clogged the parking lot. Headlines scrolled across every TV screen. Westfield Mall under investigation for racial discrimination practices. CEO Ava Harrington identified as majority owner. The secret was out. Ava stood on the balcony of her top-floor office overlooking the atrium. Reporters waited below, their lenses hungry. She'd spent her life controlling narratives, shaping images, building a world where truth was managed like branding. But not today. Today she was done with control. Tariq entered quietly. "You don't have to do this press conference." "Yes, I do. They'll twist your words." "They already did." She turned from the glass. "This time they'll hear them from me." At noon, she descended the escalator into the central atrium, the same spot where Briggs had mocked her weeks earlier. A podium waited beneath harsh white lights. Security stood on edge, unsure whether to protect or contain her. Dozens of cameras clicked as she stepped forward. The crowd fell into tense silence. "Good afternoon," Ava began. Her voice carried measured, steady. "You've read the headlines. You know who I am now, so let's start there." She let the pause hang. "I own this mall. The same mall where a security officer laughed in my face because he thought my skin meant my worth. He didn't know I signed his paycheck. That's irony. But this isn't a story about irony. It's a story about rot." Murmurs spread through the crowd. "I built this place to be a community space. But power doesn't just build, it corrodes. I let comfort make me blind. I let others manage what I should have confronted. And in doing that, I became part of what broke me." Tariq watched from the edge of the crowd. The cameras zoomed closer. Ava's face was raw, stripped of all boardroom polish. "I can't undo what happened here," she continued, "but I can expose what allowed it. Effective immediately, Westfield Mall's management contract with Metro Shield Security is terminated. Every employee complaint that was buried will be reopened. The public will see every report, every dismissal, every cover-up." Reporters shouted questions, but she held up a hand. "I know what comes next. Boycotts, lawsuits, maybe worse. That's fine, because if owning this place means protecting the system that humiliated me, I don't want to own it anymore." She looked out across the crowd, faces she didn't know, some sympathetic, some skeptical. "I'm selling the mall. The proceeds will fund legal defense grants for racial discrimination victims in this city. That's my final act here." Flashbulbs exploded. The words spread across feeds within seconds. Later that evening, the office was nearly empty. Boxes stacked by the door. Ava sat at her desk, the lights dim, the sound of the atrium echoing below. Maya arrived, exhausted but smiling faintly. "You just made half the city furious and the other half inspired." "That sounds about right," Ava said. "They'll call you reckless. They already have. They'll say you burned your empire." Ava glanced at the skyline. Maybe it was never mine to keep. Maya studied her. "You could have walked away quietly. Most people with power do." "I tried that," Ava said. "Silence didn't protect me, it prepared them." Maya nodded slowly. "You know this story won't end clean." "It's not supposed to." Across town, Officer Briggs watched the broadcast from a bar's corner screen, his career in ruins, his reputation ash. A glass sat untouched before him. The reporter's voice narrated Ava's speech. He muttered, "She still wins." No one answered. A man 2 seats away recognized him. The look said it all: disgust, recognition, distance. Briggs turned back to the screen where Ava stood framed by light, calm, composed, untouchable. He reached for his glass, but his hand trembled. The sound of ice against glass was the only applause he got. At dawn, Ava walked through the empty mall one last time. Stores shuttered, signs half-peeled. Her footsteps echoed against the marble. The same fountain where humiliation had begun now reflected the faint orange of sunrise. She stopped beside it, looking down at her reflection. For the first time, she didn't see a victim or even a victor, just a woman who'd refused to disappear. She touched the surface lightly. Ripples distorted her image, scattering it into motion. Behind her, Tariq appeared. "It's really over?" "No," she said. "But I'm finished pretending it ever was." He watched her a long moment. "You're walking away from a fortune. I'm walking towards something I can live with." They left together, the mall lights fading behind them, her empire dissolving into shadow and silence. Outside, the mural gleamed in the early light. Someone had added a new line beneath it overnight, scrawled in white paint. "Some things break so better things can be built." Ava paused to read it, then smiled, tired, unguarded, resolute. The world had changed. Just a little. Enough. 3 months later, the city felt different, but not healed. Change had teeth, and every day it bit someone new. The fallout from the Westfield scandal spread through headlines, lawsuits, and hearings. Briggs faced criminal charges for falsifying reports and obstructing justice. The police union distanced itself publicly but fought privately. Investigations widened. Careers collapsed. The mall itself was gone, sold to a social equity foundation that renamed it Harrington Commons. What had once been a monument to commerce was now a community hub, filled with workshops, clinics, and startup incubators for minority entrepreneurs. The fountain remained, So did the mural, and Ava? She'd disappeared from public view. Maya found her in a small office on the south side, wearing jeans and no makeup, bent over stacks of paperwork. "You've gone invisible," Maya said, dropping her bag. "I'm not hiding," Ava replied without looking up. "Just working where cameras don't follow." "People are calling you a symbol." Ava signed another form. "Symbols are for posters." "I'm not interested." Maya smiled faintly. "You could have gone back to the top. Boards would have taken you back." Ava looked up finally. "And become what again?" "Palatable? Marketable?" "No thanks." Maya sat. "You lost millions." I gained clarity. They sat in silence for a moment. Outside, the sound of construction echoed, the commons expanding into what used to be the luxury wing. Maya leaned forward. "The Chronicle's running a follow-up. They want your statement." "No statement," Ava said. "Let the story finish without me." Meanwhile, Tariq stood at a city forum speaking to a crowd of business owners. "Westfield wasn't one bad apple," he said. "It was a mirror. Racism isn't in policy, it's in habits and reflexes, in the silence we excuse." Ava didn't break the system. She exposed how fragile it already was. Reporters scribbled, some rolling their eyes, but others listened. He concluded, "The question isn't who gets punished next. It's who stops pretending this is new." Applause. Uneven, but real. In a quiet diner on the outskirts of town, Briggs sat alone. His uniform gone, his posture deflated. The TV over the counter played a local news segment about the new community mall. Former Officer Daniel Briggs declined to comment. The reporter's tone was almost merciful. Almost. The waitress refilled his coffee. "You that cop from TV?" He hesitated. "Used to be." She nodded slowly, then walked away. No judgment, just distance. He stared into his cup. For the first time, there was no one left to blame. That night, Ava walked through the commons alone. The air smelled of paint and wet stone. She passed a group of kids sketching at a pop-up art class, their laughter echoing through what used to be the luxury watch store. One of them looked up. "Are you Miss Harrington?" Ava smiled slightly. "Not anymore. Just Ava," the girl grinned. "We're painting the mural bigger. My mom said it's about standing up." Ava nodded. "That's exactly what it's about." She watched them for a long while, small hands smearing color over old walls, laughter instead of surveillance. It was the sound of reclamation. Later at home, she opened an envelope left on her doorstep, no return address. Inside was a single folded sheet. A typed line. "You destroyed everything I built." No signature, but she knew who it was. She looked at the paper for a moment, then folded it back, set it in the fireplace, watched it burn. "Everything," she whispered, "needed to be destroyed." The flame flickered, hissed, and consumed the last trace of his words. Weeks passed. The city slowly adjusted to its new normal. The Chronicle published an editorial. The Westfield scandal wasn't just about one officer or one incident. It was about the hidden architecture of everyday bias. The question now is who keeps it standing. The piece went viral again. But this time, Ava didn't read the comments. She had stopped measuring victory in visibility. One morning, she received an invitation, City Award for Civic Contribution. She set it aside. Tariq called an hour later. "You're not going?" "No. They're honoring you. They're pacifying themselves." "You're impossible," he said, half laughing. She smiled faintly. "That's how things change." That evening, she walked to the commons again. The sun bled gold over the plaza. Children chased each other where once security guards had patrolled. The mural now stretched across the entire wall, colors deep and new. Someone had added one last phrase beneath the earlier lines. "We remember not to repeat." Ava traced the words with her eyes. Tariq appeared beside her. "They're calling this place the new heart of the city." "Maybe," she said. "Or maybe it's just proof hearts can heal." He looked at her. "You think it was worth it?" She didn't answer immediately. She thought of the boardrooms lost, the money gone, the nights awake replaying Briggs's words, the headlines that still divided opinion. Then she said, "Yes, because for once." The silence broke before we did. The plaza lights flickered on. Music rose from a nearby cafe. People gathered under the mural, families, teens, elders. Life filled the place that once symbolized exclusion. Ava watched, hands in her pockets. a faint wind tugging her hair. Not triumph. Not closure. Just continuation. The kind of ending that leaves the world slightly better than it was a year later. The name Westfield existed only in archived headlines and legal filings. The mall's rebirth, Harrington Commons, had become a case study in civic renewal. Students toured it for sociology credits. Journalists revisited it each anniversary to measure progress. But for Ava, it was no longer a story. It was a life she'd outgrown. She lived in a modest townhouse near the river now. No chauffeur, no entourage, no press releases. Just routine. Morning walks. Coffee at the same corner cafe. Quiet that didn't feel like retreat. Just space to breathe. She'd traded ownership for influence of another kind. Mentoring young entrepreneurs, especially black women who'd been denied funding. Her name had become shorthand for resilience, but she refused the myth. She taught them something simpler. Use the system until it breaks, then build your own. One morning, a letter arrived from the city council, official seal, embossed. You are hereby invited to deliver the keynote address at the annual Economic Inclusion Summit. Ava stared at the envelope. She hadn't spoken publicly since the scandal. She'd promised herself she wouldn't again. That night she walked through the Commons alone. The plaza glowed under soft lighting. The mural now stretched across 3 stories. Community artists had expanded it, depicting not just the confrontation but what came after: rebuilding, unity, defiance. She stopped in front of the original section, the black woman standing tall over the shadow of authority. The paint had faded in places. Rain had cracked the edges, but the message remained unbroken. Behind her, she heard footsteps. Maya approached, camera slung around her shoulder. They asked you to speak, Maya said. You going to? I don't know, Ava said. Maya smirked. That means yes, Ava turned. What would I even say? That justice feels like paperwork and exhaustion. That winning costs more than losing ever did? You'd say the truth, Maya said. That's all they ever needed from you. A week later, the summit filled the city's civic hall. The audience was a blend of politicians, activists, executives, and young dreamers who knew her story by heart. Cameras lined the aisles. Ava took the stage without introduction. I've been called brave, she began. But bravery isn't what you think. It's not marching through fire. It's sitting in the ashes afterward, asking yourself what it cost. The hall went still. I watched a man laugh at me because he thought I didn't belong in a line. But the truth is, I didn't belong in the silence that allowed him to laugh. None of us do. She paused, scanning the room. I used to own one of the biggest malls in this city. I thought that meant I'd escaped the weight of history. Turns out history doesn't sell when you own the store, it just changes the packaging. A ripple of unease. Truth always caused it. I lost millions. I lost comfort. I lost my name's safety. But what I gained was worth more. I gained sight. I saw how every smile can hide a gate, how every rule can be a chain if no one questions who wrote it. She stepped closer to the edge of the stage. So, no, I don't call this justice. Justice is the fantasy we write to sleep at night. What we got was consequence, and that's something rarer, something real. Consequence changes things, a beat, then, and maybe that's the inheritance we leave behind. Not wealth, not buildings, but the courage to say this happened, and we didn't look away. Applause didn't erupt at once. It built slowly, hands hesitant, then firm, then thunderous. Maya, recording from the back, lowered her camera halfway through. Some moments didn't need to be captured, they needed to be lived. Afterward, Ava walked out into the night air. The river reflected the city lights, gold and restless. Tariq joined her outside, older now, softer around the eyes. You did it again, he said. I said words. They'll turn into something. They always do, she said, half smiling. He hesitated. Do you ever regret it? The scandal? No, the fight. She looked up at the skyline where once her logo had glowed in neon. Now it was gone, replaced by the Commons symbol, a rising sun behind open hands. Regret? She said, sometimes. But then I remember regret is a privilege. Some people never even got the chance to fight. Tariq nodded slowly. You think it's over now? It never is, she said. That's the point. A few days later, she returned to the Commons. The kids from last year's art class had painted new layers on the mural, faces of activists, poets, shop owners, workers. Beneath it all, the words remained. Dignity is not granted. It's reclaimed. We remember not to repeat. Some things break so better things can be built. She reached out, pressing her palm to the wall. The paint was warm from sunlight. Then a child's voice behind her. "Ms. Ava, is this your mall?" She turned to see a little girl holding a paintbrush too big for her hand. Ava smiled softly. "No, sweetheart. It's yours now." The girl grinned and ran off toward the others. Ava watched her go. The sound of laughter bouncing off the stone. Pure, unguarded, defiant. For the first time in a long while, Ava felt something like peace, not because the world was fixed, but because it was moving, and movement, she thought, was the truest kind of justice. She left the plaza as the sun dipped low, shadows stretching long across the mural. Behind her, the wall blazed in color, alive, unfinished, unstoppable.